Hi, welcome back to our series where Susie and I have a chat about all things around career and change. So, reminder of I'm Tracy Holland and I run Reforge Change.
I'm Susie Mosley-Payne and I run Transform Your Career Success. And we both help women in their careers who are feeling stuck, frustrated, at a crossroads, or just want more success in their careers. And we help you take back control of your career destiny and create success on your own terms.
Perfect. That's what we do. And we've been having a few of these little chats, haven't we? And today we're covering off a bit of a biggie, I think. So we're going to talk today about imposter syndrome. We're going to talk about what it is, how it manifests itself, some top tips that we've got, some things we've seen people use or we might have used ourselves that hopefully will help you if you're struggling with imposter syndrome, which, according to KPMG, in their 2020 report, we know that 75% of female executives suffer with imposter syndrome. It isn't gender-based, though. Anyone can suffer with imposter syndrome, and it tends to happen when you're in a group where you are of a minority. So that can be quite a lot of times women, but it can be anyone. It can be a person of colour, it can be someone with disabilities, it can be anybody who feels like they're not part of a larger group and therefore they get this feeling of imposter syndrome. What do you think about imposter syndrome, or how would you define it?
I think everybody encounters imposter syndrome at some point in their careers, because when you're moving into a new role and you're learning that role, you can see those around you that are more experienced because they've been doing it longer. That'd be an example. So you're going to come across it, and you might not realize throughout your career journey that it's imposter syndrome that's creeping in. Yeah. And we're gonna kind of lift the lid on the different ways imposter syndrome can manifest itself, and we're going to share some top tips on how you can overcome it when you do spot the signs of it. And there's lots you can do, there really is, but I do believe that everyone, no matter how senior or how far along in your career, you will get imposter syndrome. And is it a negative? I mean, throwing yourself outside of your comfort zone and into a new challenge, which then leads to imposter syndrome, reframe it. It could be considered a positive because you're growing, you're stretching, you're building on your capability. What do you think, Tracy?
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. No one grows in their comfort zone, do they? If you don't put yourself out there, you don't test the waters, it is stress and, challenge that enables you to grow. So if you are suffering a little bit with perhaps a feeling of, am I in the right place? Do I have the right experience for this? That's because you've put yourself somewhere which is outside of your comfort zone. And that's where all the growth happens, outside your comfort zone. I think I've seen it happen to people where it's manifest itself, though, that's given them sort of more of a negative feeling and it's actually preventing them from doing certain things. So in my experience, sort of having a fear of putting yourself forward for things is really a sign of imposter syndrome. And one of the things that I actually swallowed this myth as well. Early on in my career, I worked for a bank and I was put in charge. I became manager quite young. I was only 21 and I did quite well. And I actually really, really enjoyed it. And I got put in different teams quite a lot of times where the teams were perhaps struggling and needed someone to really sort of like boost the morale or bring them on or increase productivity. And I sat down with one of our senior managers and she said to me, and I'm not lying here, I can't believe how lucky you are, Tracy, because as soon as we put you on a team, they all of a sudden start performing. So how lucky are you? And I actually believed that baloney and didn't attribute any of the successes that I had to myself. And I internalized that feeling that every time I got a success, that was because I was lucky. I just happened to be the right person in the right place, and everyone and all the stars aligned so that everything became brilliant, but it was nothing to do with me. And that lived with me for quite a long time as an internalized belief about my success. And it wasn't until I started to unpack some of that and I started mentoring other people. And when you do that, you start thinking about yourself as well, don't you? And I was thinking, wait a minute, I actually believe that every success I've ever had is down to luck. And it can't be, and feeling that your successes have come as a result of luck is a form of imposter syndrome, isn't it? So what have you found people have demonstrated that kind of imposter syndrome?
So I think it doesn't matter where you are, like I say, in your career. If you're early in career, you've got the imposter syndrome of thinking you're not enough experience, or you're too young, or you're too this or too that. When you're later in career, you've got the flip side of that you've got all the experience, but you might feel that you're not going to be brought into an opportunity because you're older than your peers. You've got to stop that negative self-talk, haven't you? It's like you have to own where you are in your own journey, and you can tell yourself, I think recognizing the signs of what you're telling yourself and really calling out whether it's true or not, testing out whether what you're saying to yourself is reality or whether you're just making a story up. That's not necessarily an excuse, but it's giving you a justification not to take that next step or not to apply for that role. So I see with quite a few people that they'll talk themselves out of applying for a role because they don't feel they're capable, or they'll say there's no point me even trying because there's already those people who are better than me. Whereas actually a better way of looking at it is that if you do get that opportunity, being the least experienced in the room or not the most knowledgeable, that's an incredible opportunity in itself, because your growth that you'll get from that is incredible. If you're in a room or in a role where you're absolutely top of your game and you know everything, then your growth is really stifled. So that's one example. But I think recognizing at the different stages and chapters throughout your career what kind of negative talk you can give yourself and how imposter syndrome can manifest itself. It will be different for everyone and through those different changes and chapters of your career. And a real obvious one is like fear of failure. I don't want to try this because I'm just going to fail anyway. So yeah, self-doubt, fear of failure. Confidence is a big one that plays a part. When you're feeling like you've not got a lot of confidence in a certain scenario, that can then manifest itself and build and build and build. So there's a few different ways. It's not black and white, is it? I think imposter syndrome's like so many nuances to it and different ways that it can show up. But I think the first step is to kind of recognize the signs, because if you don't spot it, you can't remediate it.
Absolutely. And I think just going back to what you said about that fear, it is sometimes the fear of putting yourself out there, but it's also, I've heard people say this, there's the fear of getting found out. So like you think you're just getting by and no one's recognizing that you've not got the skills because you feel like you're in a place where you don't feel confident in yourself. And so that fear of getting found out, and you daren't apply for a new job because someone might find out 15 years down the line that you aren't really a very good project manager after all, or you're not very good at this and you're not very good at that. So you stay where you feel comfortable because you're worried that by putting yourself forward, someone's going to find out that you're actually not that good. And why didn't we know that? Let's get rid of her. That's kind of that fear. And I think the other side of that sometimes, and I've seen this with a good friend of mine, is working yourself to death because you're trying to constantly prove yourself. So I've got a friend of mine who's absolutely fantastic, and she's the best person at this job that she does that I've ever met. And she has no confidence in herself, and she always is, working 150% of everything because she is so concerned that someone is going to take her down because she's not done, you know, one minute thing, because she's got this imposter syndrome. We've talked about it loads. She is working on it, but that sort of like doing your nth degree and making sure that no one can ever spot any mistakes you made, and no one can ever accuse you of not working, you know, yourself to death to an early grave because you're so worried that you're going to get found out for not being the person that they think you are, because you doubt yourself and you haven't got that confidence.
I think that's a great example. So for anyone who resonates with that, what I would say is flip that on its head. And instead of saying, I feel exposed because I'm trying to portray this, that I'm perfect, out to, you know, everyone looking at you and thinking you've got to be on your A game and you've got to be perfect and know everything. Own the fact that you are just human and that you don't have to and you cannot know everything. Confidence comes, and we talked about it in a previous episode. For me, confidence comes by being really clear on what your strengths and weaknesses are, and own that. Don't pretend you're strong at something that it really is a weakness. Own that it's a weakness and be really clear, because by giving people that clarity, they'll know what you are there for and what you're not there for. If you try to be a master at everything and perfect at everything, you are creating exposure points for yourself.
Yeah.
So I would say be really clear and openly talk about the areas that you can contribute and be an expert in. And that can't be everything. So in a role, like let's pick a role of a change manager, there'll be certain elements that you'll be absolutely incredible at. Maybe the understanding the change journey, maybe helping guide the end users in the businesses on that change journey. You might not be great at writing the comms yourself, so you might need a comms person who's going to write the comms. Or you might not be the person to deliver the training, because again, that's a different skill. So you might have somebody in your team who delivers the training. So it's about staying in your lane, being really clear on what you are amazing at and not so good at, and then not shying away from asking for help, because that's a strength in itself, isn't it? If you feel confident enough to say, I'm not really sure about this, and ask for help and own that you don't know the answer, then I don't think anyone's going to judge you for asking a question around it. There's no such thing as a silly question, is there?
Oh, absolutely not. No. And I think sort of it's easy to say, isn't it? Believe in yourself and, you know, reframe the thoughts, the negative thoughts. But actually it's much harder to do in practice. And I think one of the things that is really useful, and it's a tip that I give lots of people who are struggling with this, is build up your evidence bank. So start recording when you've done something well, reflect on a project you've done, or reflect on your week and think, what went really well this week? And what did I do that had a really positive impact? How have I contributed? How have I added value this week? And that will then be your evidence bank for those times when you're feeling a little bit like, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. Flick back through and think, well, you know, this month I've done this and I've done that and I've done that and I learned this and I contributed here and I added this value. And that sort of evidence bank will start to feed your positive thoughts and the way that you actually view your own capabilities, as well as those negative sort of like little self-talk that you might have in your head. And I wanted to take this opportunity to share a tool that I use quite a lot, that when I talk to people about it, they've not heard of it. It's not a secret. It was like really popular in the 1990s, I think, when I was first a trainer. And it's called the Johari window. And I don't think you've come across it either.
No, and I was working in the late 90s. I haven't come across it, no. So I'm
earlier than that. I only started working in the 90s, so it can't be any earlier than that.
We're both showing our age. Let's not talk about age again on this show. We end up covering it every time.
It's called the Johari window. And what it is, it's 4 quadrants. So it's a square, like the square window from Play School. It's a square with a cross through it. So you've got 4 quadrants. And each of those quadrants is an aspect of your skills, your strengths, and your personality. So the first quadrant is your open quadrant, and that is things I know about myself that everybody knows about me. So for me, that would probably be that I like to have a laugh and I can quite easily bring a lot of energy to the room. I know that about myself and I believe that about myself. And everybody I talk to will tell you that. That's my open area. They're your skills and strengths that you can use to build on, because everyone knows about them. You know about them, and they're things that you can easily start building on, and you can use those as your little confidence boosters. The second quadrant is your hidden area. Now, this is things you know about yourself, but other people don't know about you. So things people might not know about me is that I actually get very, very nervous when I'm doing public speaking. No one would believe that because I actually manage to mask it, but that's something that's very, very difficult for me to do. And so that's a hidden area for me. And what I would ask people when they fill that area in is, why aren't you sharing that with other people? A little bit like you said, that's a weakness of mine. And actually, it might be that I could get help on that. And why am I keeping that from somebody? Or I have a hidden strength that I've never used in my job because it's never called for me to do, I don't know, data analysis. But actually, I love data analysis and I just haven't told anybody about it. Why am I keeping that strength to myself? And that's your hidden area. Your third one is your blind spot. So that's stuff that everyone knows about you, you don't know about yourself. So this is one where you need to get brave and ask people what they think are your strengths. Where are you contributing? Where are you adding value? And some of those things will be blind to you because you won't realize the impact you're having. And the things that are your strengths. And that's a confidence booster as well, because that's stuff everybody else thinks you know, but you didn't know yourself. So working on your blind areas is really good. And also you can get constructive feedback in there because you might have areas that are in your blind areas that you want to work on. So people might think you don't listen well enough, or you don't take ideas seriously, or you don't finish things through to completion, which you might not be aware that that's obvious to everyone else. So it's really useful to get that feedback, and that could be your growth area as well. And then the final quadrant is, I don't know this about myself and no one knows this about me because I've never had the chance to test that out. So it could be putting yourself forward for something that you've never done before, that will use a skill that you don't know whether you can do it and no one else does either. And that's your unknown quadrant. So that Johari window is a way for you to build a picture about yourself, understand your strengths, work out where you might want to share some of those strengths because they're in your hidden area, or get some feedback on some of your strengths or potentially development areas because they're in your blind spot area. And it's a really, really useful tool to use, and people just don't use it. And I think it's fantastic. It's a really good sort of self-discovery and an opportunity to talk to other people. So if you just went up to people and said, what do you think of my weaknesses or development areas, they might be a bit taken aback. But you're going to frame it in a, this is what I'm going through, these are the things I've already identified. What would you say about me? Because I really want to know about it. It's just a way to structure that conversation as well. And it can build your evidence block, your evidence sort of like portfolio, so you can start getting your confidence from it. So I don't know if you would think that would be a useful sort of tool and technique to use.
And I'm going to do it. Now you've told me about it, I'm quite excited to do it. So yeah, we'll put a link so yes, everyone can have a look at that as a tool. Having that in your toolbox is really, really key. I loved when you said, before you explained that the Johari window, I loved when you said about getting your evidence bank together. So that was going to be one of my tips as well, to say, when you're in that space of telling yourself these negative stories, or you're telling yourself you're not capable, or questioning, having that evidence bank to look back on and look at examples where you did actually overcome that and you did achieve that particular activity or whatever it is, it can boost your confidence, and it can challenge and help you reframe. The other thing that I think really helps, and I practice this a lot, is just have a notebook. Doesn't need to be a journal per se. Have a notebook at the side of you, and if you're having an off day and you're telling yourself, I can't do this, or if you've got a challenge ahead or you're looking to apply for a role and you've got these negative voices, write down those thoughts and then write a positive equivalent.
Yeah.
It's really simple, but sometimes just externalizing those thoughts, getting them out of your head onto paper, it is a coaching technique of letting go, and then you can move on with your day and overcome that particular thought. You don't want to be dwelling on it. The quicker you can get rid of it and stop it from being a blocker for you, the better. And if you are feeling like you're not skilled up in a particular area, and when you've done a little bit of reframing and you think, well, actually, it is still a weakness for me, then take some proactive actions to build those skills up. It doesn't need to be a formal training course. Get on YouTube and do some watching YouTube videos. If you're like your public speaking one, Tracy, is a great example, because I bet if you wanted to, you could proactively go on YouTube and watch some public speaking videos. It's probably just you've never felt the need to, but if it became a real blocker for you, there are little ways that you can remediate that really quick, aren't there? So yeah, I think that you don't, just because something is holding you back, the quicker you can get rid of that, the better, and then move forward. Amazing.
And I think, so for me, I'm going to say my top tips and I'm going to ask you your top tips. So my top tips are: recognize that self-doubt and take away its control. So by building your evidence bank, you're taking away its control. Accept when people tell you you're good at something, because don't not believe them. Believe what they say when they're saying you're good at something, and find tools that can help you build your confidence. So I've gone through that Johari window, but there's a myriad of coaching tools and mentoring tools that you can use to start building that little confidence block and that evidence bank. And then celebrate your wins, like you say, keep a note of those wins, because it's really useful. You never remember the things you had really good success at. You remember the things that burnt you, that, really fed into that doubt. So make a note of those wins and celebrate them would be my sort of 3 top tips.
All of those top tips, amazing. So I'm not going to give any more top tips. I'm going to set you, whoever's watching, I'm going to set you a little bit of a challenge. So make this new year, because we are about to go into the new year, you've got a new 12 months ahead of you to smash your career goals, right? So rather than going into this new year with imposter syndrome or low confidence controlling you, to Tracy's point, reframe it and think, right, this is the year where I'm going to look to step outside of my comfort zone, because that in itself will give you the tools to overcome all of the low confidence, all of the imposter syndrome. So start small, find little ways that you can step outside of the norm or your comfort zone. It doesn't just need to be in your career, it could be in life. So maybe do something that terrifies you, like if you're scared of spiders, go and hold a tarantula. If you're scared of heights, go and maybe don't do a bungee jump or jump out. Just do something that's a little bit high up, but just look for ways where you can build on that muscle, because the more you can throw yourself out of your comfort zone, the more growth you're going to get. And the quicker you can do that, the quicker the growth. So the minute you feel something starting to block you or a little bit of negative thoughts step in, think, right, I'm not having this. I'm taking control, and find a way to overcome it. And by throwing yourself outside of your comfort zone, doing something that does scare you a little bit or makes you a little bit nervous is safe, something safe, let's say that. But just look for those opportunities where you're just, you're getting that growth and you're getting it super fast. That'd be mine. So it's a bit more of a challenge.
I think that's perfect. And I think, like you said, imposter syndrome is a silent thing. It lives inside your head. It tells you things, but getting it out by writing things down, by trying stuff that you're scared of, that's really going to take away its power so that you can overcome it. And the more you start to believe in the things that you can do, by achieving little things, the less power that self-talk and that self-doubt has over you. So I think that's a brilliant challenge, and I hope everyone takes you up on it. I will do too. I'm going to try and do some public speaking next year.
I'm going to set you a challenge, Tracy. You're going to have your own podcast and then you're going to do loads of public speaking. That could be your mission next year, to get out there as a public speaker.
I'll take you up on it. So yeah, I think that sort of wraps us up for imposter syndrome. I hope that the top tips that we've given and the little tools that we've talked about and just really boosting your confidence is really going to help people who listen to this. And yeah, thank you so much. And thank you, Susie, for everything that you've contributed as well to this one. So look forward to seeing everybody next time.
Thank you, everyone, for watching. Hope you've got massive value, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget, click subscribe, like the video, and get notifications. See you next time.